Hello and welcome back. Today's video is going to be my top 5, bottom 5 eyeshadow palettes. These top 5, bottom 5 videos used to be so popular several years ago. People did it for eyeshadow palettes, their lipsticks, highlighters, and I think they are a whole lot of fun to watch. So I thought I would do it with eyeshadow palettes, which is definitely my favorite makeup product. I have done a ranking my entire eyeshadow palette collection video. I'll link that in the description box if you want to see that. That was back in May, so I definitely have gotten some palettes since then, and you know, preferences change over time. I will link that if you do want to see that. Now, the palettes I'm picking in the bottom 5, of course, it is all personal preference. They aren't necessarily bad palettes, they're just not my favorite compared to the rest of my collection. So I thought it would be fun to do. In the comments down below, please let us know what your, favorites and unfavorite eyeshadow palettes are, and let's get started. I'm going to start with the bottom 5 so that we can end on a high note. These are in no particular order. The first one though is the Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Lila. Now I actually really like the formula of this. I know a lot of people don't like the formula. Personally, I do. My issue with this palette is that, first of all, I just don't really reach for mini palettes anymore. I just kind of realize that's a personal preference, but I feel like these colors, I guess it's a little weird to me that there are 3 purpley shades with 2 neutrals. I don't know, I guess it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would have preferred for her to go all out and do more variety of purples, and also these 2 shades on the eye, they look nearly identical. So the formula is good. I do like this palette, but compared to other things in my collection, it's really more the color story that doesn't speak to me a whole lot. The next one is this Zoeva palette. This is the Spice of Life, and I got this in BoxyCharm a couple months ago. And I've talked about the Zoeva formula in the past that I just feel like the metallics are not as metallic as what I prefer, but I do also have the Cocoa Blend, and I like that one a lot more. This one, I feel like the shimmers, they're even less metallic than the Cocoa Blend. That one has some that can be built up. And I don't know. I mean, I like this palette. It's good. It's just not amazing. I think the mattes, though, by Zoeva are amazing. It's just the shimmers are a little lackluster. Although I will say this one is more metallic. This greenish gold really disappointed me because I love greenish golds. And it just looks a little muddy on the eyes. And it's not that pigmented. So it's kind of a bummer. I don't think this is terrible, but I definitely prefer other palettes over this, and I definitely prefer the Cocoa Blend over this Zoeva palette. Next up, we have the Maybelline Lemonade Craze. Now this palette, I've had it for a couple of years now, and I love the color story, which is why I keep it around. I love this peach and the yellow and this kind of coral shade. I think it is beautiful. My issue with this one, and I've hit pan on it, I really like that pink shimmer shade there. It takes a lot of building to get these to be as pigmented as I would want. They're a little dusty, they're a little crumbly. It's just not the best formula in my opinion, especially compared to other palettes I own. I will say though, I have seen people reviewing some newer Maybelline palettes, like I can't remember what it's called, like In the City or something like that. And people really, really like those. So my guess is that Maybelline has improved their formula. I used to love some Maybelline quads like 8 or 9 years ago. They were some of my favorite eyeshadows and I wore them on a daily basis. But then once I tried other brands, I just felt like it wasn't that amazing. But yeah, this, love the color story, but the formula definitely could be better. I'm curious though, if you have one of those newer Maybelline palettes, please let us know if you think they've improved their formula, because so many people I follow on YouTube and Instagram have raved about them, but because I don't love this, I was just very, very hesitant to buy one of those. Alrighty, the next 2 eyeshadow palettes I know are from brands people really, really love, but it just didn't work out for me as much as I hoped that it would. The first one is Huda Beauty, and this is the Rich Nudes palette. This is the only product I've ever purchased from Huda, and I love this color story. I love a 9 pan. I love a smaller palette that still has some variety, compared to just like a 5 pan palette. I love the color story, and I love the mattes. The mattes are really, really good in this palette. It's the shimmers that just don't really do it for me that much. They just lack pigmentation. They tend to have a lot of fallout. I mean, I can definitely get them to work, and some of them are better than others. Like this red metallic is one of the better ones in the palette. So I do think this is a good palette. It's just not amazing. And compared to other formulas I have that are easier to work with and the metallics are more metallic, I mean, I like a really, really intense foiled eyeshadow on most days, like Juvia's Place level. And this isn't quite that, but I can make it work. I definitely can. I like it. It just doesn't amaze me, which is why I have not bought any other Huda Beauty palettes. Interesting though about Huda Beauty, I feel like when a new palette comes out, it tends to be very hit or miss. I feel like she maybe has different formulas in her palettes. I'm not sure. Again, this is the only one that I've owned, but people rave about these mini nude palettes. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's terrible by any means. I do think it's good. It's just not the best of the best. All right, last up. And if you saw a video I did a couple months ago called Eyeshadow Palettes I Regret Buying, this was in there. And this is the Nabla Coral Cutie. I know people love Nabla. It is a very, very popular brand. And I don't think this is a bad palette. It's just, again, it's not my favorite. I think a couple of the shades, like these two more shimmery ones, are a bit more difficult to work with. The mattes are amazing, very, very high quality. And again, it's a very small palette like the Natasha Denona mini one, where I like a bit more variety. I've just kind of decided for myself personally, I prefer a palette that is maybe like a 9 pan up to maybe 16 or 18. I like a bit more variety. So I've just, realized I need to stop buying these small little palettes, which I have. I haven't bought any in a while. But this, again, this is not terrible. The formula I think is better than the Huda Beauty formula, but the color selection also, I don't know. It's just not my favorite color story. I do love wearing pink eyeshadow, but I don't know that I would pair it with a gold. I don't know. This is not a bad palette, and I think this one in the Natasha Denona, I like the formula better than the other 3 palettes that I'm talking about, but I don't know. It's just not my favorite. I know people love these mini Nabla palettes, but not for me, I guess. Alrighty, and my top 5 eyeshadow palettes. Now this was more difficult than the bottom 5 because those bottom 5, I've kind of known those are my least favorites, so it was pretty easy to pick those out. But the rest of my eyeshadow palette collection, I really, really do love everything. So this was more difficult, and in my ranking eyeshadow palette video, at least one of these palettes I didn't have then, but the rest I actually did. So I don't even remember. I didn't go back to watch that to see what my top 5 were. But anyway, Colored Rain Queen of Hearts. I am so in love with this palette, and I have fallen more in love with it since I had it in a project pan recently, in my Fall For You project pan, and I've been using it quite a bit, and this is such a good palette. I just can't even. I love the color selection, the color story, the variety in the shades. You've got purples, you've got an orange, you've got a gold, you've got a more taupey type color. The formula though, wow, one of the best formulas I have tried ever. These are super metallic. As I mentioned, I do prefer that. And the mattes are very, very easy to blend. Even like the purple, which you would think a purple is more difficult to work with. This one works perfectly. It's crazy. It's just such a good formula. Color selection. I can't think of a negative thing to say, although actually, I guess I will. The one thing, this shade here, Crown, is a really pretty color. It looks white, but it has a bit of gold and a bit of pink in it. I love it on the inner corner. However, this one is crumbly. So the formula on this one actually is not that great, but the formula on the rest is amazing. Like I said, I love this red metallic, this purple, and those orange. Those are probably my favorite. But yeah, this is one of the best palettes I've ever tried. It is so, so good. Alrighty, next up is the original Norvina palette. I really do love this palette. I gotta say, it has a more, I think it's a unique color story. It's not something that we see a lot, and I know when it came out, a lot of people wanted it to be an all purple palette, and I myself was one of those people. I did initially anti-haul this palette and say I wasn't going to get it, but when I saw it in person, it was very, very different than what it looked like online, and I really enjoy the variety. I actually really enjoy kind of half neutral, half colorful palettes. I really like wearing colorful eyeshadow, but some days I do like to wear more neutral or somewhere kind of in between. And this is one of those palettes because you could go all out. You could do an all pink look, all purple look, or you could tone it down a little bit, wear a rose gold, you've got a burgundy. This shade here, this cool tone periwinkle color is so pretty. I don't have anything else like that in my collection. And also this is one of the best formulas from Anastasia, I think. These shimmer shades are so shimmery and metallic. I love them. They can be a bit crumbly, and I will say they do work better with a wet brush, but I just think this is a really nice color story and I like the quality, and I kind of wish, I don't know, for me, Anastasia has definitely fallen off the map. It's a brand that really doesn't interest me anymore. Their products, they're just not speaking to me. I kind of preferred the olden days of Anastasia when they were releasing this palette and the soft glam. You know, that was kind of the era of ABH I liked, and that was more my style of makeup. I don't know, the products they've released in the last year really are not interesting me, but this is a good one and I love it. Also, the shade Volatile, it's kind of a grayish purple. This is really unique. I don't have anything like that in my collection, and yeah, this is just a good all-around palette, and I do think that's a really nice color story. The next palette is actually the only one in the top 5 that I did not have when I did do that ranking my eyeshadow palettes video a few months ago, and that is the Viseart War Mats. I've been talking about this palette so much in the last couple of months, but I really have been wearing it very often. I grab a shade out of this almost every day. It is just so versatile, and I can do an entire all matte look with this palette as well, which I have done and I enjoy. It has a wide variety of matte shades. I like these 3 pops over here. It is, I mean, that's what it is. It's a warm matte palette. It's nothing really all that unique or revolutionary, but one of the best matte formulas I have tried. I really just like it a lot. And if I'm struggling with an eyeshadow look that I feel like isn't blending well, I grab one of these and try to fix it with that, and that really works. It's just a good palette, and this is a pretty dense formula. You can barely tell that I've used it, but like I said, I use at least one shade almost every day out of this palette. Also, this has virtually no fallout. I've talked about in another video that I have this and one other Viseart palette. I've never tried a brand that has virtually no fallout. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I don't care a whole lot about fallout because I do tend to do my eyes first, but I must say it's an added plus of this formula. I think it is great, absolutely amazing. I use this so much, and this is definitely one of my favorite palettes that I've bought this year. Alrighty, the next 2 you could probably predict if you've been watching my channel for a while, the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. I'm sorry, but I just still love this palette. I bought this over a year ago when it launched, and I've gotten so much use out of it, and I have since purchased other Natasha Denona palettes. This was the first full-size palette by her that I ever bought, and it may still be my favorite or in the top 2. I do plan on ranking my Natasha Denona palettes, but I have a few that I want to use more before I can fully rank them, but this is still one of the best. The formula in this is absolutely amazing. I will say, now that I own more Natasha Denona palettes, her formula varies from palette to palette. It's a little bit frustrating because I don't think all of the palettes I own are as good as this one, which is kind of a bummer. I wish she would be a bit more consistent with the formula, but this one, I mean, the metallics are so metallic, they're so foiled. Her mattes blend very well, and I will say that she's very consistent with her matte formula. It always is spectacular, but what tends to have more variation for me, I've noticed, is the metallics and the duochromes. Some are more chunky than others. But in this palette, they are all amazing. The only con I have about this palette, which I have mentioned several times, I did a full review on this when it came out, there are some repeat shades. I mean, a couple of these orangey browns on the eye, they look nearly identical. And at that price point, that does frustrate me. It's $129. So I just personally don't think that you should be repeating shades in a palette that expensive. I mean, in general, I don't like repeat shades in a palette, but it's a little frustrating that there are a few in here. However, that is the only con. The quality is amazing. I love the color story. This is just a really good palette, and I'm really happy that I've used it as much as I have. Alrighty, last up, the ColourPop So Jaded. This is a good palette. I really, really enjoy it, and I think, first of all, I do really like the ColourPop formula. It is one of my favorites, along with Natasha Denona and a few others. But I really like the color selection. As I mentioned, my perfect, size of a palette probably doesn't go past 18. This is kind of a lot of eyeshadows. However, I think that they were well selected. It's not just like a mishmash of a million shades, kind of like a Morphe palette. I don't like how huge those are, and those have a lot of repeat shades anyway. This does not have any repeat shades, which I really respect. It works well with the theme. It's very gemstone, but you can do so many different looks and they do work well together. There are some really unique shades in here, like this lime green peridot. I love that one. Also this one, ametrine, this kind of mauve type color. I don't have a whole lot else like that. It does look like it has shimmer in it, but on the eye, it just looks matte. I did remove the glitter shades because the ColourPop glitter shades have irritated my eyes, so I got rid of the ones that I have in the palette. So that was really the only con, but with so many other good shades, I'm okay with that. Another cool one is Fluorite. This is like a duochrome. It's really cool looking on the eyes. Yeah, I just feel like this is a great color story. You can do so many looks with it, but it stays true to the theme. It's not just a million colors in a palette together. And yeah, like I said, I really do like the ColourPop formula, and this is a really good palette. Alrighty, that is it for this video. My top 5, bottom 5 eyeshadow palettes. I gotta say, I do think that the top 5 was harder to pick because I have so many palettes that I love. But yeah, the bottom 5, again, they're not terrible. Some are better than others. Just compared to everything else that I own, they are not as good. So please let us know in the comments what your picks would be. That is it. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.